Hello everyone, my name is Valor, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at the new One Punch Man chapter that just released, The Awakening of the Gods. So the chapter starts with Garou launching fists through his portals, which is pretty unique in terms of fighting style. I think it actually adds to this fight a lot that Garou uses his portals in like a unique way, and it kind of adds to the versatility of Garou when comparing him to say other verses, if you were ever to do like a cross-verse battle with him. Just his sheer like diversity in how he fights and his variety, I think is extremely interesting. I think One does a very good job of actually showing that and detailing how versatile Garou actually is. So this one page is already pretty good for the chapter. And Saitama actually copies it and does it right back to him, which is also very interesting, because it shows us that Saitama actually has the ability, which has been like shown a couple times before, but it's made like very overt here, that he literally can copy things like Blast's technique, Garou's techniques. So you may be able to say that if you ever fight someone in like a cross-verse battle, he would just steal their abilities. He'd literally just copy them just by looking at them, which is very powerful for Saitama. Especially in his own verse as well as other verses. But it's very interesting that Saitama is actually able to do this, and it really sets up the gap between Saitama and the other people around him. At this time, they were kind of portrayed to be somewhat close in power, but we see pretty quickly after that Saitama is actually rapidly growing in strength. So they exchange a couple times, and it's shown that Saitama is actually, just rapidly growing in strength, right? He goes from kind of exchanging blows with Garou to actually just kind of bodying him and pressing him. And Garou even notes that he's just copying his moves on purpose. And Saitama's like, what's wrong? I thought you were going to copy me. You serious? And you said you were going to try and surpass me? Go ahead. And that's the point of everything, right? So it kind of shows that Saitama is interested in this fight, and he understands that Garou is trying to copy the full power of Saitama, but Garou goes on to tell us that he's just countering with even more power than he has, and each punch is much harder than the last, and he can't keep up with that. So he continues to fight, and he actually hits Saitama in his stomach, and what looks like blood actually flies out of his back. It's the same kind of design, or it's just the same kind of imagery used for when Saitama on the same page punches Garou back. We see blood fly off of his mouth. When he hits Saitama, that same kind of impact comes off from his back. So Garou did actually seemingly just make Saitama bleed here, even when he was getting stronger. But it is noted by Garou in that same page that Saitama is just rapidly growing stronger, and he's not able to keep pace. And we get this interesting graph that actually shows like the checkpoints of power, and we see that Saitama and Garou were actually trading places of who was stronger throughout the fight. So initially Garou was stronger than Saitama, and then Saitama became stronger than Garou, and then Garou became stronger than Saitama again. Then they were about equal, and then Saitama massively increased the gap by awakening to his true power that no one was able to push him to. As the narrator tells us, that Saitama actually was continuing to grow, and his growth rate, which had gone unnoticed by anyone since there was nobody remotely on par with his strength, suddenly began to soar exponentially due to an upsurge of emotion like none he had ever experienced. So no one was able to notice that Saitama was growing this fast until now, because Garou had been the only one to actually reach that level and was able to actually see how fast he's growing in strength, which is insane to think about, as how fast Saitama's growing in power. And that exponential statement is very interesting, right? Because you can take it in two different ways. You can say it just means by a very large amount of something, so he's just, vaguely getting massively stronger. Or you say it's literally a Saitama times Saitama each checkpoint, which if you think he's like FTL, it would be you take the value of the speed of light, and then you times it by the speed of light, and then you do it again, that new value times itself again and again and again for each exponential checkpoint. That's kind of like the far end of it, But the safest thing to say here is that he is just getting massively stronger. And now the only one on a level to be able to observe Saitama's growth was getting completely left behind. So this is just the narrator confirming that Garou was on a level to observe Saitama's strength, which kind of lends credence to Saitama going all out previously, as Garou was on that level to be able to see how strong Saitama was, because he himself was that strong. And that graph also kind of supports that Garou was even actually stronger than Saitama at some points. It doesn't seem like he was just holding back, because that graph is continuously going up and up and up, and it seems to be like the max he has at the end, at the very top, right? And we see the checkpoints up to that point. It doesn't seem like a checkpoint of him holding back. It seems to be him reaching new levels and reaching new limits continuously. There is like a limitlessly strong statement in the last chapter, but that's actually a mistranslation. The roars, the actual like original Japanese for it, literally just says he's strong. So that does make sense for Saitama to be continuously growing in power here, especially with the VGS. And we just see that Saitama becomes so powerful, he literally sneezes the planet away. So we get this amazing double spread of his sneeze like shattering the ground underneath him and like shifting all the rocks and dust and sand away. And we see when it actually impacts Jupiter itself, it hits it so hard, it completely pushes all of Jupiter's gas off of its like gravitational pull, essentially. I'm pretty sure Jupiter is a gas giant. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I recall it being that. If it's not, his sneeze actually just wiped the planet away. But if it is a gas giant, I don't quite remember if it is or it isn't. But if it is gas giant, he completely pushed all of that gas away with just his sneeze, which is an insane feat and probably comes out to like planetary-ish. Obviously, we know Saitama has much greater feats from the previous chapter with like destroying stars and stuff, and is already confirmed to be planetary. So this is an insane feat from Saitama, and definitely something that is building consistency for him being as strong as people make him out to be. And next we get Garou in Saitama mode, calling Saitama insane, like he's a monster, and Garou just kind of hype beasting Saitama as someone that shouldn't even be allowed to roam free on the planet because he's so strong. And he kind of compares himself to that and tries to throw Saitama into the sun, it seems. He like teleports him into the sun, and then he tries to teleport back to Earth. And it's kind of unclear, but it looks like the sun actually explodes in Saitama's face. we get this like really funny scene of Saitama literally farted and caught up to Garou and in his portal, which is actually just crazy to think about, that him literally just like doing that catches him up to Garou, who was like trying to escape from Saitama. And Saitama punches him in the skull, sends him body bagging back into the planet, just completely crushes him into the ground. And we get to see this like very interesting scene of Saitama not really thinking that he's a hero because he's very poor at it in his eyes. Like he has all of the strength, but he can't actually do what he wants to do with it. He can't be this like hero that he envisions himself as, or his ideal version of a hero. And Garou is kind of put into a similar situation. He wants to be this like ideal villain in his eyes to save people, like that kid, but ends up in pursuit of that killing the child and actually ending his life. And we see Garou just kind of like losing it and tearing up. And next is perhaps one of the most impactful feats in all of One Punch Man, and that is Garou teaching Saitama the causality reversal. So Garou teaches Saitama a power, his like cosmic power, that allows him to reverse time by using the antimatter, or creating antimatter, essentially. And that it stated that the two of them were imagining their own inner universes, which is a very interesting statement because it kind of implies that, you know, they can actually imagine their own universes, which is very, very powerful for their like mental abilities. Some people would say that, like, you know, they literally have universes inside of them, which is interesting. Not too far out, but I don't think it's what's really being pushed in the scene. It doesn't seem to be what's actually being portrayed. More so that they're just imagining their own inner selves. And we see like their cells and them creating particles and antiparticles generated in pairs, and they're trying to create these and copy each other, and they imitate each other's movements, and they actually reverse time by doing it. And we see that Garou actually dies by turning to salt because God took the power out of him, and Saitama actually just begins to travel backwards in time. And this is where the immeasurable speed arguments come from. While Saitama's traveling backwards in time, he sees in the past Garou and punches him, but it's shown to be like normal playback. While it's just kind of, as soon as he arrives back in time, he just punches Garou. It's not him doing this through his own natural speed. Like, him running this fast is what's moving him backwards in time. It's just his ability to imagine those particles and reverse time like that. So he can just reverse time whenever he wants to, and but it's not because of his own speed. It's because of more so an ability he can copy from Garou. Well, he copied from Garou. Because if Garou was that fast, he should have already beaten Saitama, who couldn't do that, but that's clearly shown not to be the case. But it is stated that when he went back in time, the punch landed before it was thrown, and I can see how some people would interpret this as like, oh, his punches hit before they're even thrown. Like, that has to be immeasurable speed. That's definitionally immeasurable speed, but that's not really what's actually happening, right? So he throws the fist while he's traveling back in time, and as soon as he appears in the past, his fist, he's built the momentum from that punch, and his fist is already in a position to hit him. So it's not like an immeasurable speed punch. He's in two places at once, punches him. It's more so that as soon as he arrives out of the backwards in time, his fist is just instantly connecting with it, and that's what they kind of mean by it landed before it was thrown, because there's no motion of him lifting up his fist and throwing it. His fist was just instantly in his face because he went backwards in time. And that's what they mean by like reversal of causality, absolutely unavoidable. It's just reversing the series of events to all the way back to when Garou was standing there. Saitama arrived at that point in time and landed the punch. It took not one punch, but 0 punches to finish the fight, and that's all it means. But I can definitely see how a lot of people are going to interpret this as immeasurable speed. It's a bit finicky, but I don't think it's actually like immeasurable speed Saitama. And Garou, the hero hunter, has just appeared. And we see God rip the power out of Garou, and Saitama actually merges, it seems, with his self. The 2 Saitamas in that time merge with themselves into one Saitama again. So it seems like the universe kind of correcting like the paradox of there being 2 Saitamas and plopping them into one Saitama. And we see Saitama's naked, and that's the end of the chapter, with Genos hitting Saitama in the stomach to end it off. So a very interesting chapter, especially for Saitama power-wise. We get to see a lot of new feats, a lot of crazy new stuff. Some things are definitely questionable and very debatable, especially that immeasurable speed stuff. I can easily see people arguing it. I don't think it's quite immeasurable speed, just because of how the events play out. I don't think it is immeasurable speed, but I understand completely how people will interpret it that way. But that will be all from me. My name has been Valor, and I hope you have a wonderful day.